want to inform this platform that this very important panel discussion in this Saturday morning will be moderated by our esteemed Super India member, Ms. Valerie Agarwal. Let me officially introduce Ms. Valerie Agarwal. Ms. Valerie is a humanitarian professional with more than 5 years of national and international experience across 10 Indian states and 2 countries in disaster management, emergency capacity building, multi-stakeholder project management, and community organization. She has an academic background of economics, social work, and international humanitarian law. Let me hand over the stage to Ms. Valerie for the proceedings of the session. Over to you, Valerie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gauhar, for all those introductions and for bringing us together on this platform. I once again would like to welcome all our panelists to this discussion. Okay, so today's session is on forecast-based planning and financing, especially in terms of monsoons. So like we know, India is vulnerable to multiple hazards, whether it is floods or earthquakes, cyclones, droughts, landslides. However, monsoon in India has caused catastrophes of a large scale and has remained a challenge in the country due to the extreme weather, the extreme impact that these weather events have. Now, the weather forecasting system has a very, very important role to play for a proactive and technologically driven disaster management system by providing accurate and reliable forecasts and warnings for a timely and effective response. Together, we are here in this session today, and we aim to understand the monsoon-related challenges in our country and also the pivotal role that forecasting system can play in disaster responses. With that, I would like to ask my first question to Mr. Anil Sinha. So when we talk about monsoon in India, and this is to set a background to the session. So when we talk about monsoon in India, what are the major challenges that India specifically faces, and has there been an impact of climate change on the impact of monsoons?
Yeah, thank you, Valerie, and namaste and good morning to everyone. Let me especially say namaste to Dr. Bhanu. Also, I can see him. He's a corona warrior, and recently he suffered and came out successfully, which is so great because otherwise the situation has been quite gloomy. In the sense that most of us have lost near and dear ones, you see, which has been very, very unfortunate. And I'm happy to see Dr. Amir Ali and other friends, you see. Now, I'm thankful to Sphere India and Valerie, who talked to me, a few days back. Sphere India for organizing this, I think very timely on a very topic of great relevance, Now, coming to the question which Valerie has asked about the monsoon and the challenges. You see, monsoon in India and for the Asia, I would say, is the most important weather event, you see, because it has many ramifications, implications. 60% of the crops in our country are rain-fed. And this monsoon is there confined to 4 months. You see, June, July, August, September. I suppose those are the 4 months. And this 60% of crop, which are rain-fed, they employ nearly 50% of the Indian population. So that is the kind of a implication which we have. Now, and the monsoon in Asia is also, we are realizing, it's not something which has local significance, local implications, but this is something which is entwined, with several aspects of global climate, you see, scenarios. And to understand monsoon behavior is one of the most complex phenomena that we find, despite the fact that there has been tremendous advancement in science and technology, modeling, and algorithms and things like that, you see. So while we have covered a long distance, yet we find that, you see, the monsoon is one of the most complex phenomena, you see. And there are many things, I'm not going to details like, there are any number of studies done on the latest monsoons, what are the effects leading to the changes which have been there. We are seeing extreme climate events on the last week and week before that. We have seen, I think there is no exact maybe correlation with monsoon, but we do not know, But even before the onset of the monsoon, it's so rare, it's so surprising, it is so shocking that on both the coasts of India, eastern and western coast, we had some two serious cyclone events. They were not just another cyclone events. Both of them were very, very serious, you see. And monsoon has been shifting its patterns, so therefore we don't really exactly know what is the correlation. Uh, and we have seen, you see, one situation which is rather alarming, I would say, and we need to prepare is that Bengal, while everywhere we are now facing multiple disasters. One is pandemic itself for more than practically a year and a half. Now in addition to that, we had cyclone, which we had earlier also. But then this time, this cyclone Yas, while the cyclone was there in the background of the pandemic, you had an earthquake also, you see. Fortunately, it was just 3.8 on the Richter scale, but it could have been 4.8, could have been 5.8, you see. And imagine then what kind of a scenario is there, what kind of challenges which are there before the local administration, the national system of governance, and the community, you see. So I think that way, Valeri, I would say that monsoon, as I mentioned, some of the factors is monsoon with its variations and unpredictability, the kind of changes which have been taking place, etc., etc. I think poses a lot of challenge. While a lot of these we have been able to unravel with the help of science and technology, but I think we have to go ahead many, many miles ahead, you see. So I think at this stage, I will stop at this point, listen to others, and then come back. You see. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you so much, sir. The way we have also designed this panel discussion is that if anybody has anything to add to what our panelist is saying, you may please feel free to do so. With that in mind, I'm going to move to Mr. Amir Ali with our next question. So like we were discussing about the impact of monsoon and the kind of catastrophes that it can cause, urban floods is also one of the phenomena that we have been seeing more so in the recent past, which has caused a lot of damage, whether it was to human life or economic loss. So could you help us understand that what is the main cause of urban floods and how can the impact of urban floods be mitigated? And you may also speak with us about your experience in Jammu Kashmir in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you, Anilji, for highlighting the issue. The point is that, if we talk of Jammu Kashmir is vulnerable to most of the natural disasters that we find in the books. We are in seismic zone 4 and 5. Anilji was talking about areas getting affected by one disaster and then simultaneously being affected by the other. We are vulnerable to all such kind of disasters. And we've had our share of earthquakes. In 2005, we had a major earthquake of magnitude 7.6. And though we lost about 1,000 lives on this side of the border, but around 1 lakh lives were lost across the other side of the border where the epicenter was. And then we have had our share of cloudbursts also. Leh Ladakh in 2010, where it's an area where there is minimal rainfall, but then they had a cloudburst there. Then we had the floods of 2014. You see, unfortunately, in Jammu and Kashmir, we've had urban flooding, which is the topic today, in certain areas, but not in the majority of the areas. But what we realized in 2014 was that no area is safe from floods, barring a very, very few areas. If we talk of Srinagar city, the areas which are called the downtown or the old city, they were the areas which were safer. Why were they safe? Because our elders had actually built the city around the areas which are less prone to floods. And then why did we move on to the areas that are in the floods is something that we need to ponder. And now, of course, we are into this phase of the COVID pandemic. If I briefly talk about what happened in 2014, we had continuous rainfall starting right from the 1st of September, which went on till about 6th of September. And in only 3 days, we had unprecedented rainfall of almost 650 millimeters, which is the highest recorded till date. And the normal discharge because we have this river Jhelum that flows through the valley, the discharge in the river Jhelum, which is normally 31,000 cusecs, went to over 135,000 cusecs. And all the districts got affected. In fact, as I said, Kashmir is a closed valley, and the only drainage is in the form of the river Jhelum, and that too is a very narrow drainage. The river Jhelum is measured at a couple of places. One is at Sangam, that is towards the south of Kashmir. The other is Ramunshi Bagh in the central Kashmir, and then towards the north, that is Asham. At Sangam, the danger level is 21 feet, and it crossed 35 feet. At Rambagh, that is Ramunshi Bagh, that is in Srinagar, the danger level is 18 feet and it crossed 30 feet. In fact, the water spilled over all the banks. Now, what are the main causes, if we can categorize it? Basically, what is happening is that the cities are expanding, and because of the demographic growth, there is fast economical growth also, and there is additional demand for land. Now, people have to construct. So what happens is that this triggers unplanned land use growth. And the built up area gets increased. There is a decrease in the forest cover by the deforestation, which increases the runoff. And then we have the floodplains. Like in our case in Jammu and Kashmir, or in Kashmir, we had the area called Kandi Zal, which used to be traditionally cut off whenever a flood would take place. But it has got converted into a built up area. There is lack of integration of flood hazard risk in the development of the urban master plan. And the economic factors are most important, because if you want to buy land and you go into an area which is flood prone, the land cost is much lesser in that. Now, one of the few challenges that I feel need to be brought about is that, which I think applies to everyone, is that our stormwater drainage system is not very adequate. These stormwater drains get clogged, they get silted, and we don't desilt them. We start desilting probably when the monsoon season starts. Fortunately for us, we are not directly affected by the monsoons, but we are affected by the western disturbances. But then we don't need to clear these drains only pre-monsoon, but also because we are getting untimely events. And community needs to be made aware that, the dumping of the waste into the drains needs to be stopped. I think if there is a possibility, we need to have different centers outside the main center, which can be developed. And for that, we need to have a rapid urban transport system, so that, people, instead of all going into the city center, go out into these satellite towns, and from there they can commute. Over to you, Valerie.
Thank you so much, sir, for that background about Jammu and Kashmir.
Voice lost. You are on mute.
Oh, was I audible till now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just want to add one thing. Amir sir has given example of 2014. So you can see variability of monsoon across India. 2014 was drought year for India, and there was floods in Jammu Kashmir, very heavy floods. So that is the variability we all are looking at. That's what.
Thank you, sir. I think it's very pertinent that you brought that to our attention. I would take the next question with Dr. Bhanu. Just a second. Right. So, Dr. Bhanu, when we talk about, weather forecasting systems, or even traditional ways of forecasting, have we been able to predict these disasters in advance, especially monsoon related? And have we been able to mitigate that impact?
Yeah, thank you, Malari. Thank you. I think it's a very relevant question. But see, IMD is very, the key department which is taking care of all these monsoon related or climate related forecast. But the basic problem is, other than cyclone, we are not able to use properly its advisories, its information to the last mile, to the people who are really suffering and they want to do something. I'll give you one information. I have worked with Sinha Saab at many places, and we have been discussing with the different departments as well as the offices of IMD at local level, regional level. What is happening? They give information in such a way that it can be understood by those people who are dealing with the thing in the departments. But common people are not able to do. NGOs, civil society are not able to do, and it's a blanket kind of thing. There are offices at local level, but it's a blanket kind of information which cannot be used properly. So most important thing is that it should be going to people in such a way that being utilized properly. Now, or different kind of satellites, it is there, it is giving probably a accurate information to people. But the river level, the how particular river is going to behave in particular area, how people need to be taking, how much time do they have? See, earlier what was happening, they were getting information with 1 or 2 weeks lead time. But now they are getting information 2 months lead time are there if they are using good technology kind of thing. But what is happening, even having all those things, we are not using it properly. We are not using it properly. In cyclone, we are definitely using it very nicely, and at national level, it is being seen that impact is mitigated. But now here in other areas, probably forecasting and its utilization is very, very crucial thing. And that's why, I mean, when we see our what you call Sendai framework, there also these targets, they still say the vision, what is there, that still says that knowing disaster is very important thing. So since, as I mean, MDG and SDG, knowing disaster is important, and here I think early warning is the key to success.
Thank you so much, sir. I think I would pose my next question to Mr. Makaran. Sir, if you could help us understand that which are the major departments. I mean, of course, we know of IMD, which is the key department when it comes to forecasting. But are there any other departments or organizations that help with the forecasting of weather in India? That is my first question. And I will also like to pose my second question to you. What are the kind of technologies that are used in this forecasting?
I'll see. There are multiple institutes, like institutions, government institutions in India. They do forecasting. So when I was in MSc in 2000 something, so what happened on 2001 or 2, I don't exactly remember. IMD came with their own forecast. There is another institution called NCMRWF, government institution. They came with their forecast. IISc Bangalore came with their forecast. IITM came with their forecast. And you see, SAC, ISRO, which is in Ahmedabad, they came with their own forecast. So when these, and all these forecasts, because they are based on models and different initial conditions, or there are multiple things, I'll come to that. So all these forecasts were different. So and at that time there was very big critique on that. So government decided, Indian government decided that only IMD will give monsoon forecast as a government agency. Okay, and all these government agencies will give their forecast or guess of monsoon to IMD before time. So they generally has a meeting in which all these scientists, every institutions for representative scientists, they will come, they present their forecast, and then IMD takes the decision. That way it is given. If you see private industry, then there is SkyMate, who started giving their forecast. Then there is IBM, a weather company, which they give their forecast. So these are main two who give from India, Indian monsoon forecast. Plus some international agencies are also there, US based. Like we have UGC, US as UCAR, University Corporation of Atmospheric Research. So they also give forecast for different all countries in the world. So like those institutions, ECMWF, there is Bureau of Meteorology Australia, they also give monsoon forecast. There is one institute in Japan, Jamstec, they also give forecast for monsoon. And if you see, I will just come, the many panelists or many attendees might know. See, there are different type of forecasts. Like we right now heard about floods, cyclones and all. So different type of forecast means, first is nowcasting, which we call. Nowcasting means next 1 or 2 or maximum 6 hours forecast, which is generally used by aviation, in general used by aviation person. So where to fly, or where there are thunderstorms in air or clear air, turbulence is there. So that is called as nowcasting. Even that is very helpful for disaster management if it is very accurate, and if the disaster management teams are already in place. Then there is another type of forecast which is called a short range forecast, which is generally for next 3 days. So these types of forecasts are given for cyclones or some heavy precipitation events. Those might occur in next 2-3 days, or some heat waves, cold waves type of thing. Then there is another type of forecast which is called as medium range forecast, which is given for next 15 days, or yeah, say 3 to 15 or next 15 days, you can see say. So that is generally consumed by these agri input companies. Like I missed one thing, short range forecasts are also consumed by your this renewable energy, this industry. They need this wind, solar, and this short range forecast. Medium range forecast is generally consumed by agriculture people, agriculture community, and agri input companies. And then comes the long range forecast, seasonal forecast, which we call a monsoon forecast, comes in long range or seasonal, which is for next months or couple of months or 4 months, like that. Then there is so monsoon forecast is also consumed by governments, insurance industries, and other agri input companies. This is very important forecast for agri input companies, and other those who wants to plan their activities for next 3-4 months. There is another forecast which we don't call forecast, we call it as climate projections, which is for there for next 30-40 years. So these are generally used by governments or big government projects, planning cities. So they will tell, okay, rainfall in this particular area will be increasing. So that type of drainage system they have to do. That type of other whatever requirements, or if it is decreasing, they have to do some planning for getting more water and this. So now your next question, for what techniques we use for forecasting. Of course, these different forecasts are given with different type of techniques. Like till medium range forecasting, generally a weather people, or in IMD, SkyMate, whatever, they run weather models. Those are dynamical models. Like I'll explain. Suppose I'm driving a car with 40 km/h. I apply acceleration of 10 kilometers per hour. Then after 1 hour, my speed of my car will be 50 kilometers per hour. So it is like velocity. The equation is velocity at time t is equal to t my whatever u plus acceleration into time. So this is the simple equation. So these type of equations are available for pressure, temperature, these gradient equations or equation of motion we call. So those are available and those are modeled. So these dynamical models are run, and actually they are simulation models. So mathematically cloud evolves, they precipitate all this in model. So in These are called as short range forecasting, generally WRF, which we run that. And there is another model, GFS. If you see, many people nowadays see that windy.com. So you see those wind circles and all. And right hand below, if you see, there are three models they give. One is ECMWF, European Center model. Another is GFS, which is US based model. And another is Icon, something that I missed, which is that. So these models generally are being run, and these medium range forecastings are given. For seasonal forecast, coupled models are run, like these models, which are the WRF or the GFS. They don't take because these are short range forecasts, so generally ocean conditions are not considered. But for seasonal forecast, ocean conditions or ocean models are coupled with atmospheric models, and those forecasts are predictions are given for that. Plus, for seasonal forecast, other parameters like El Nino we hear, IOD, Indian Ocean Dipole we hear, all those parameters are also considered for giving that forecast.
Thank you so much, sir, for that information. I will go to Mr. Mihir with my next question. Now that we know that how forecastings happen and when forecastings are in place, whether they are short term or medium term, what can humanitarian organizations and other stakeholders which are involved in disaster response, what can we do to leverage this information from the forecast and prepare for a more efficient disaster response?
Yeah, thanks, Valerie, and good morning to all the panelists and participants. I think, let's say, if you see the accuracy of various weather forecasts, I think over the period that has improved. As we have also seen the climate variability, there are still lots of gaps in that, and currently, let's say, the accuracy of forecast is around 70%, which was like 5 years ago, that percentage was something around 40, 45, 42%. So those kind of information, and with the new technology and superior weather models, I think the accuracy is overall has increased. And it is very crucial for humanitarian agency to kind of use this information to plan their own response strategy. And when I say a humanitarian agency, one is the NGO. I think they can think of pre-positioning of some of the relief items based on this forecast, like what are the hotspot areas if they can identify, and also have certain strategy which can help them in terms of collaboration with various other stakeholders in that region. The second is, like we have seen, one of the critical need after either the major cyclone or flood is identifying of the safe place for the affected communities, at least for some period. And if we know in advance that these are the areas, so if there is no availability of such shelters, we can pre-identify those places and also communicate to the communities about that where to evacuate in case of emergency. The third aspect is also this, like that is always a challenge of this last mile connectivity. Like even though we have various improved models and everything, if you see the evacuation which is happening in those areas will still face issues, and I think civil society can play a major role in terms of effectively communicating the potential impact of such weather forecast. I think IMD has also started giving the potential impact now. At least in cyclone, we have seen that they have given potential impact, which can be very useful for humanitarian agency to plan some of the intervention. For an example, if we know that there might be a probability of large scale destruction of the houses, then you can plan certain skilled people to be there as part of the immediate response or a near like recovery kind of action. So I think from seeds we have also tried to use this forecast. So currently for cyclone, what we have done is that looking at the roofing type in the cyclone path, what is the probable impact which it can have on the infrastructure, particularly housing, and how that can be also conveyed to the administration, so they can, one is effectively evacuate those people, but in the long run they can also think of a kind of a retrofitting or strengthening of those houses, which can ensure that over the time we are reducing the losses due to such kind of disasters. So yeah, so these are some of the actions which civil society can take, and I think even a 5-day forecast, accurate forecast, can save lots of lives and the loss of property. So I think if we can merge this forecast with the action on ground, I think we will see a larger kind of impact in terms of using such technologies going forward. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. With that, I would like to ask my next question to Mr. Anil. So, like Mr. Mihir gave us some action points on what can be done based on forecasting by humanitarian organizations to reduce the loss of human life and also reduce the economic impact. Can you elaborate on some good practices or models that have been adapted by any Indian state, which successfully helped forecasting to mitigate the impact, whether it was economic or human, due to the disaster?
Yeah, thank you. Valerie, we have had very good interventions, from other panelists, Amir, Manuji, Mihir, and Makran, you say. As far as the good practices are concerned, there are some bright spots you see in India, which we see now after the great deal of work in the last 20 odd years, you see. Talking of Bihar, if I may take one example, as far as floods is concerned, we have what is called FMIS, if I recall, Flood Management Information System, you see, which is uh, in conjunction, in collaboration with one is Central Water Commission. I think somehow Central Water Commission has not been mentioned. IMD, of course, is one of the most important in terms of weather forecast and rainfall and all that. But as far as the floods are concerned, Central Water Commission started, I think, way back in 1958, and now over the years, they have nearly 200 stations, broadly speaking. I mean, there are details, but I'm not going into that. So that, you see, they come up at various points, they have these flood levels monitoring, etc., etc. And that combines with, National Remote Sensing Center, then state governments, the local administration, etc. So I think in Bihar, I would say whether it is Kosi floods or other floods which have happened in various years, flood is very common and regular in Bihar, you see, now like in many states. So there, this flood monitoring information system, FMIS, which is located in the Department of Water Resources, you see, and then in coordination with others. And there is a coordination with the across borders with the government of Nepal also, because there are many rivers. Bihar is crisscrossed by large number of rivers which originate in Nepal, you see, in the foothills of Nepal or the upper reaches of Nepal. And therefore, the coordination, collaboration with the government of Nepal, not only at the highest level, but even at the district level, there are, you see, large number of maybe about a dozen or more than a dozen districts which are bordering just one state of Bihar, you see. And I used to be collector and district magistrate in one of the bordering districts called Madhubani, you see. And I remember that we used to have very regular coordination meetings with the CDOs. They call chief district officers on their side. So I suppose there were 3 districts, and we used to have very regular meetings, DMs from our side and the CDOs from their side. So I think that collaboration has been there. And then not only that, at the local level also, community level, and Dr. Bhanu knows about it. Bhanu is an exceptional and extraordinary expert as far as the floods management are concerned. I think last 30 years or so, I personally know, I'm aware, I have visited his work in Gorakhpur. How community-based level collaboration in flood forecasting, etc., etc. That has been going on, and how that helps in the planning at the local level, and then response at the local level. Uh, I think Bhanu also mentioned one thing, which is very important, is about the Sendai framework. Where the first priority is know your risk. And I have always held it religiously as the first step towards disaster risk reduction or disaster mitigation. Because unless until we know, or anyone here knows about the risk, supposing there is a risk behind you, behind me, or any one of us. Now, God has not given us, eyes at the back, So you or I would not know about the risk which is behind me, whatever kind of risk I'm talking. I can give examples, say someone is pointing a gun just to make a point, you know. So you don't know. But if you or I were James Bond, if I may use that, a bit lightly, uh, then we would have some kind of a alert system, maybe in my specs somewhere here, maybe in my ring, or maybe in my computer, maybe somewhere here. So that alerts me, and that is the kind of a early warning, that we are talking, isn't it? So therefore, I think it is very, very important, most crucial and critical to understand the importance as to why SFDRR has placed the first priority at know your risk. Your response, your planning, your best practices, everything starts from knowing your risk. But knowing your risk does not mean just knowing the name of the possible disaster. Not knowing the name of the hazard, but it is also knowing details about that, how complex, how difficult it is going to be, how grim, how vicious. Like I think Mihir mentioned that, now when the forecasts are coming from the IMD, then they are also talking of the possible impact, which is very important. So therefore, now from being very technical jargon kind of a forecast, now they are trying to connect to the people, and talking on people's language. Because if they say that these kinds of houses in say Tokte, which hit the western coast, or we had Yas, if the forecast says that, look, these kinds of houses are likely to be, you know, destroyed, then that, look, the danger is of that level, and it helps the community, it helps the local administration, to take action, appropriate action, and that is what is happening, So we can pat our backs, and very justifiably, that as far as the shifting from flood to cyclone now, let me say, that we have been able, since Philene, I have seen 99 super cyclone in Odisha. I used to be joint secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, looking after this subject. And when on 28th of October, in the evening or sometime, the super cyclone had hit Odisha. 14 districts. They have a total of 29 districts, if I remember. So half of the state had been hit by that. You know. Now next day early morning, that is on 30th, along with then Defense Minister, late Mr. George Fernandez, I got the message as Joint Secretary. I was supposed to accompany him. And right at 4 o'clock or 3:30, I was in the technical area of Palam Airport, And then I accompanied him. And we went, our flight, a defense aircraft, went to Bhubaneswar. We wanted to land there, but we couldn't land because the winds were still so strong that it was not possible to land. So I think we diverted, went somewhere else, etc., etc. So that is another story. 10,000 people, according to official figures, died. Unofficial figures, which were quoted then, were close to even 30,000. And I have personally seen in subsequent visits, you go, villages had been wiped out, and what you saw in place of villages were in drains and here and there, dead bodies, you see. And if people were trying to lift the dead bodies, you try to lift this, then the skin will come out and the hand will go down. I mean, that kind of a scenario. So 99, when 10,000 to 30,000 people died, they were killed by this. Coming to Filin in 2013, then Hudhud, then Fani, and then so many of them, and lastly they stopped in the west coast and Yas in the eastern coast, along with the pandemic. I mean, I shudder to think how local administration, say in West Bengal and Odisha, has been able to shift 1.5 million people. 15 लाख, आप कहीं पे 5,000 लोगों को शिफ्ट करने जाइए, आई स्पेंट माई टाइम इन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन होल ऑफ माई लाइफ, तो आप वो नहीं कर सकते हैं. It will lead to law and order situation kind of a thing, you see. Understand? But to be able to, why I'm highlighting, I'll just explain. 15 लाख लोगों को शिफ्ट करना, उड़ीसा ने किया, बंगाल ने किया, you see. And look at the loss of lives. Practically nothing, you see. 2 here, 4 there, that kind of a thing. Now, I think that's a great, great achievement. A lot of countries across the world are unable to understand. But then how it happened, it's important for us to reflect on how it happened and why it happened. You see, 99 to 2013, 14 years, there's a long journey when the government of Odisha, OSD, district administration, the Department of Disaster Management, Chief Minister leading, they have worked with the community. The key lies there, you see. Apart from building a whole network of cyclone shelters, multi-purpose cyclone shelters. I'm not going to the details of that, but I think it suffice to say. And then working with the community, because the management of community has to identify, community has to see the cyclone shelter as their own resource, as their own asset. It can't be something कि भाई हम तो यहाँ पे रहते हैं वो cyclone shelter government का है. No. You see, the key to success lies in working with the community and community owning these resources, and that is why it is easy now to communicate. Communication is very important. So these administrations, we have been able to communicate with the local administration, not only district, but down to panchayat level and to village level. And therefore, there has been peaceful shifting of lakhs of people within, say, how much? 60 hours. Cyclone typically gives you 72 hours. Some time will go in initially mobilizing resources, like buses and trucks and this and that. So we're left with just about 60 hours, even less. I mean, it's a miracle, literally. And hats off to, but then the downside is, while that is great, downside is that you see, so that's the best practice. But the downside is that the economic losses, the loss of infrastructure, that we have not been able to reduce. Any of these cyclones which I mentioned, I think there has been tremendous amount of loss of infrastructure, public property, private property, etc. And so I am happy to say that the government of India has taken this grand initiative of CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And the story is just beginning to unfold. CDRI, I have confidence and hope that next 10 years or so, working with all the stakeholders, all the players, and with so many countries coming together on this, so technology is coming, being exchanged and all that, etc. I think we should be able to reduce our losses of the infrastructure and property also. Thank you. Over to you, Valerie.
Thank you so much, sir. I will build on to your point about knowing your risks, which is also very, explicitly stated in the Sendai framework. And with that, I will ask my next question to Mr. Amir Ali, sir. Sir, when we talk about Kashmir, now we know about the 2014 floods that happened. The state now knows about the risks that kind of exist. What has been done in the aftermath of those floods to sort of reduce the impact of any further weather situations or any further floods that might happen? So how has the state understood its risks and made efforts towards reducing its impact?
See, many initiatives have been taken post 2014 floods. In the first place, we didn't have a separate department looking after disaster management. It was subservient to the revenue department. We now have a separate department of disaster management, relief and rehabilitation. And we revamped our state disaster management authority. We have formed a divisional disaster management authority, which is the only authority of its kind in India, because we have a scenario in Jammu and Kashmir where we have a shifting capital. The capital shifts 6 months to Jammu, 6 months to Kashmir. So therefore, the two divisional commissioners are very, very important as far as the disaster management is concerned. Of course, we also have the district disaster management authorities. And like Anilji said about the Sendai framework, we also have the consultants who have been appointed under this project. Post 2014 floods, Government of India, with the help of the World Bank, started the Jhelum Tavi flood recovery project. It is a 1,500 crore project, and a series of mitigation strategies are planned under that, like reconstruction of the infrastructure that was affected due to the floods, like roads, critical facilities, hospitals, schools. In fact, we are planning to reconstruct maternity hospital, that we only have one maternity hospital in the entire Kashmir Valley. That is the tertiary hospital called the Lal Ded Hospital. And a new block is being constructed, which will be functional in a disaster like an earthquake also. So means that even if an earthquake is taking place, the doctor does not need to stop the surgery, they can continue the surgery. This is something that will be the state of its art. And I think we have certain examples like in Bhuj, etc. Then we realized that in 2014, we had a lot of dewatering stations, which were the pumps were pumping out the water and throwing it to the river Jhelum. But because the dewatering stations were below the HFL, they were already inundated under the water. So now under the project, what we have done is that we have raised the level of these dewatering stations above the highest flood level and provided them captive power in the form of DG sets, because there can be power failure at that time. Various capacity building initiatives have been initiated in terms of training of volunteers, etc. We also have the Abda Mitra scheme that was initially started here in Srinagar district, in which 200 volunteers were trained, and now it has been expanded to other districts, and they've also started the training of these volunteers. As far as the flood management is concerned, we have a channel called the flood spill channel, through which the water is diverted whenever there are floods. But the flood spill channel had been encroached upon, and as part of the project, the bottlenecks have been removed. There were certain bridges that had been constructed, some roads that had been constructed on these flood spill channels, some houses, some trees were there. They were all removed. This water was passing through a wetland and getting absorbed in the wetland. So a channel was made through the wetland so that the flood water can pass through, because these wetlands act as the sponges in terms of floods. But if the entire flooding is done in that wetland, it can fail. Then some hotspots have been identified as far as the embankments are concerned, and they have been strengthened. Then we have also identified in the flood prone areas the flood relief shelters. And not only have we identified the shelters, of course, like Anilji talked about the cyclone shelters, we don't have it so much because flood is not something that happens very often, but then we need to be prepared for it. So these flood relief shelters have been identified, officers have been deployed, and the supplies have been pre-positioned in these areas that, for example, if people have to remain stationed in that area, they will need bedding, some LPG gas, some rations, electricity, sanitation, etc., security. All these aspects have been taken care of. The afforestation program has been started with the support of the forest department in the catchment areas. What is happening now is that under this flood mitigation plan that the irrigation and flood control department has started, when the phase 1 of the project will be over, of course it is still in progress, the discharge capacity will enhance from 31,000 cusecs to 40,000 cusecs. And hopefully after the completion of the first phase, when the second phase starts, the discharge capacity is to be brought to 60,000 cusecs. But of course it is still short of the 1 lakh plus cusecs discharge that we had in 2014. Then we've also done the inventorization and pooling of resources. We saw in 2014 that many departments were having resources, but they thought that we are not associated with flood management, like the Senegal Municipal Corporation, the Mechanical Engineering Department, etc. So now what has happened is that the government has decided that whenever there is a disaster or an impending disaster, all these resources, including the men and machinery, will be pooled together and redeployed on the instance of the concerned district magistrate or the divisional commissioner. Then under the World Bank project, we have also done the hazard risk vulnerability assessment of the entire state. And we have also done the river morphology study of two main rivers, that is River Jhelum and River Tavi. A little bit I want to talk about is that we are now doing the DRDB, that is the disaster risk database. That's going to be a web-based tool by which we'll be able to do the risk assessment and the risk forecasting. We are also initiating the process of the IOFS, that is the Integrated Operational Forecasting System. That is also being done under the World Bank project through an agency called the RMSI. And this IOFS will be established in the Emergency Operations Center for hydrometeorological disasters like flood, flash floods, avalanche, drought, etc. And will be able to provide us real-time forecasting and warning. We'll also have, hopefully, a state-of-the-art decision support system in the EOC, like Anilji talked about, James Bond using those X-ray glasses and all that. I don't know. Well, we are also hoping that, we have that kind of a James Bond kind of a decision support system. And when I have it, I'll come back to you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Amir sir. I do know that you have to skip to another meeting at 12. So while this is something that we do at the end of the session, which is taking key messages from all our speakers, I would like to just break from the pattern a little bit and ask you for your key message in terms of what are the actions that, organizations can take, or how can, forecasting help us in mitigating the impacts of disaster when it comes to monsoons. So if you can just give one key message on that, and then you may proceed.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm grateful that you accommodated because I have to leave for another meeting. You see, the point is that in Jammu and Kashmir, like my friend Mr. Makarand talked from the SkyMet, that IMD is giving the forecasting. But I assure you that in Jammu and Kashmir, the IMD, that forecasting that we get from IMD is very, very accurate. In fact, their director, IMD, Mr. Sonam Lotus, is a household name. No marriage takes place in Jammu and Kashmir till a phone call is made to Mr. Sonam Lotus. What is the weather likely to be on such and such date? So, of course, like in all the systems, it cannot be 100% accurate. But then we have a very good system. We have tried to, correlate all the systems together. We have the University of Kashmir. We have other universities also that are working on this, and we are trying to dovetail and connect them. We have a Doppler radar system installed by the IMD department. We are in the process of establishing more. We have a very good state disaster response team, a force that is established in Jammu and Kashmir, 2 teams of them. And out of that, we have also deployed teams in various districts so that, the response time can be reduced. We have quick response teams located at various places. I forgot to mention that, we have procured a lot of motorboats under the support of the World Bank, and our response to the disasters would be much better. Now, as far as my key message and all would be concerned is that, disaster is something that, we can plan for. But it is something that, we cannot anticipate how the disaster is going to be. What is the magnitude of the disaster going to be? What will the areas that will be affected? Of course, we are doing the studies and all that can give an overall view of it. So the point is that, we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared for the worst. And we need to plan in such a way that, my key message would be that if our community is prepared, because you see in 2014 floods, what happened is that majority of the people in Jammu and Kashmir, unlike in Bihar, don't know how to swim. Anilji, Bihar people, they experience floods every now and then. Majority of them know how to swim. But if we take people in Jammu and Kashmir, of course, there is a small fraction who know how to swim, but majority don't know how to swim. But despite that, we had only 300 deaths. despite the fact that we had such a major catastrophic disaster in terms of this flood, and which we had maybe after a few centuries, but less number of people died. So that is because the community came forward and they helped each other. So therefore, my focus would be that if we are able to prepare the community in how to, use these jugaad type of floating devices, everybody doesn't have a life jacket, etc., and how to not prepare your house, not to construct your houses in flood-prone areas, so that even if the flood occurs, the damage could be minimal. Thank you. I hope I can take your leave, because I have a meeting which actually would start around 12. So I have to just rush for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to all the panelists. Thank you. And thank you to Gohar also. Thank you.
So Mr. Amir Ali rightly emphasized on the preparedness and awareness level that needs to be built amongst the community. But I'm going to go to Dr. Bhanu with my next question, and I'm again going to build on something that Dr. Anil was saying. While we have been able to, mitigate, have been able to reduce human life loss based on the forecasting that has happened and the measures that we have taken place, we have not been, very successful in doing that when it comes to infrastructure and also economic loss. So could you help us understand that, is there a way in which forecasting, because Mr. Makarand was mentioning about the long range forecasting and also the climate projections, is there something that we can do which will eventually help us reduce the economic loss of a disaster based on forecasting?
Yeah. Thank you, Valari. Thank you so much. Actually, this question brings one more thing. As rightly Anil Sinha sir has mentioned, he corrected me that I did not mention CWC, Central Water Commission. They are more responsible to make people aware about flood situation in any area, and they have got ample number of stations also. The most important thing is the economic relationship of disasters and hazards is not being understood. Like Sendai framework, it mentions so many things, but we are not trying to understand how these hazards are linked with our development. Or in other words, you can say that DRR, disaster risk reduction, is a development aspect, core development issue. And that core development issue is not being understood. Hence, sustainability is not being seen by people. So that is one very important thing, that our perception, our understanding of how to place it, how to link with our developmental process, how to link with, DM Act was there since 2005. Now, after 16 years of DM Act, no department, I'll say in our state, because I have been working in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. So Bihar is little better or much better because of so many things. But Uttar Pradesh departments are still not trying to focus as how risk reduction can be linked to the regular development process. Development is on one side and disaster risk reduction is on the other side. So sustainability could not be there. Now, as far as if you see the study also, the national level study and international level studies are there, but sub-national studies are not there. Somehow China could, what I have searched and then found, that China could see few things in certain areas. They have done some studies of 26 years information, but at the same time, they also could come that direct damage of disaster gives a positive stimulus to growth. Direct damage from any disaster gives a positive stimulus to the growth. But whereas this meteorological disasters. They are there. They go for. I mean, you see, these disasters are impacting GDP. These disasters are impacting GDP. The common person, any if you see the last mile connect beneficiary or person who is a participant into this process, he is definitely going to be weaker and weaker because of each disaster. He is losing all the support system. He is migrating from his own place, or the entire family is migrating. Workforce is definitely migrating. So what we see that the understanding which should have been there to reduce the risk is not there. So most often when we talk of response. We have done this response, we have done this response, and we did do very well. But what about risk reduction? That is, I think, that link we don't establish. Establish means the development persons. Now the basic issue is rightly Amir Saab also said, Bihir also said, Sinha sir also said that how these linkages could be established, people could be educated, trained properly, so that they are able to see the relationship between their risk, their efforts, and the kind of result they are getting. So the entire process is still to be, I think. And in this, I think UP SDMA, if you see Bihar SDMA, they have been doing wonderfully well. Even many other Kerala SDMA, Jammu and Kashmir SDMA, they are doing wonderfully well. But at the same time, most of the DDMAs, they are not able to pick up this idea. They are not able to. So I think this linkage has to be established. How the grassroots or the last mile or whatever you can say is to be connected with the risk reduction concept. I think then mitigation will definitely come up. Then the plans which are made can be seen that how whether they are target oriented and result oriented, or not getting the right kind of result is not seen there. So that documentation, that process, that debate, the entire cycle has to be maintained. And I think then only we can see. And now at the same time, we have a continuous bio disaster pandemic is there, which is going to be there in some or the other form. So now we have to have a kind of thinking that it is always a multi-hazard. It is not going to be a single hazard anytime. So the multi-hazard scenario is always there, and that multi-hazard is key for anything, for preparation, for our approach. Everything should be from the eyes of, from the lens of multi-hazard and not single hazard. Yeah, Balari.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhanu. I'm going to move to my question with Mr. Mihir. And I'm diverging a little bit from what Dr. Bhanu said also. What I think it will be helpful for our participants to understand right now is that, is there a difference between forecasting and predicting? Like, is there a scientific difference between the both? Is there a conceptual difference between the both? And then how can this understanding help us in the implementation of our projects, whether it is in risk reduction or mitigation or even response?
Yeah, thanks, Valerie. So yeah, there is a difference in terms of the forecasting or prediction. So I think the prediction is basically concerned with the outcomes of the unseen data. So for example, you will have a data which you will feed into a data set, and then you will see the estimation of that result, and that will give you some prediction. But when we talk about forecasting, it's a sub discipline within the prediction, but it takes into account the time series data when they kind of create the model and for a particular place in terms of the weather related uh, forecast. So that's why, like, you must have seen that we always talk about the weather forecast and we don't say that weather prediction. So the fundamental difference, just to give you an example, if currently there is one place where the rain is happening, and if somebody has to tell you that for the next 5 minutes, what would be the likelihood of that rain in that area. So when you do a forecasting, then apart from the that specific time and place, you will also see the indicators of atmospheric pressure and the temperature. And based on that, the likelihood of rain happening in that area is going to be higher. Now, if the same thing is predicted, then the prediction model will take into account the only the temperature and the atmospheric pressure as an indicator. And oddly, the atmospheric pressure, if it's high, so that is basically associated with a clear sky. So if you will use that prediction, then you, for the same situation, the prediction will say that there won't be a there will be a less likely chance of a rain occurring in that area. So that this is a fundamental difference between prediction and the forecasting. So forecasting in a way has, apart from the other indicators, the time or a temporal data into consideration, and they use that to say that what would be the likelihood of either the adverse rain or those kind of issues. So that's why, like, if you have observed in the economic space or the economist and all that, they always predict. They don't say that we are going to forecast, because they are evaluating certain set of data, and they might not consider the time specific issue as part of that. So that's the fundamental difference. And in terms of how this information can be useful, I think there are lots of ways. I think we heard lots of examples from Bihar, also JNK. We have heard Amir Ali has said. Like, when you will consider all this data, one is based on various kind of indicators, you will devise your strategy, whether it's a developmental oriented strategy or a disaster risk reduction. But we strongly feel that disaster risk reduction should be part of any development issue. So interestingly, we have done this one study of the underlying causes of disaster. So disaster is a manifestation of lots of issues. It's an event which will kind of overwhelm the capacity of one system. And that disaster will have lots of contributing factors. And until unless you don't address those underlying issues, you won't be able to address the larger causes of disaster. So, so this kind of data would be very useful in terms of developing various either intervention of your own program. Like, for an example, we in one of the program which we have done, we have also tried to use that how school can be used as a climate lab, like how school student can be engaged in collecting the data of a local area. There is, I think, Markanji can share more, but there is huge variability in terms of the macro level data and a very specific data in one locality. And this is very evident, particularly in the mountain region, where things drastically change from one place to another. So until unless we create this entire mechanism at a country level, where we can get the accurate local data, and how we can use the existing system to provide that linkage to this entire national level system, then there can be more accurate and evidence based decision which various people from, let's say, one family to a district or a state or a national government. They can take those kind of decisions based on various level, including the civil society themselves for the various programs which they are doing. So yeah, let me stop there.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to move to Makaran sir with my last question, and then we'll take key messages from all of our panelists. Um, what I would like to understand from you, sir, is that artificial intelligence is being used, across the globe in a lot of sectors, in a lot of sections. Does artificial intelligence also play a role in weather forecasting? And if yes, then how so?
Yes, just before answering this, I'll just tell what definitions we use for prediction and forecasting in weather. So prediction is probabilistic. There is always a uncertainty attached to that, and forecasting is deterministic. Like we give there is 5 mm forecast is called a deterministic forecast, and in terms of monsoon, you see that all agencies give that there is 90% chances that monsoon will be normal. There are 5% chances monsoon will be below normal, something like that. So that is a probabilistic forecast. Probabilistic forecast is called as prediction, and deterministic is called as simple forecast. So that is the difference. And you came to artificial intelligence. Yes, in weather forecasting, for nowcasting and short range forecasting, the artificial intelligence people are using at very high degree, because nowadays lots of data is coming in, and artificial intelligence, machine learning, these tools are mainly depend on what kind of data you have. If you have good data, your this machine learning and artificial intelligence will be very good. Like everybody was saying, Sinap told from history from 1999. 99, the super cyclone. And when the data came to us, then only government took some decisions. Before that, the data was not available. So same way, if there is lots of data is nowadays available to us by various agencies, or even if you go online, there is lightning data available, pressure, everything. So in those cases, these artificial intelligence things are playing very important role in weather forecasting. Yes, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, sir. What we'll do now is that we'll take one key message from all of our panelists, and then we'll open the session to question and answer round, because there are quite a few questions that I see in the chat box. So, Mr. Anil Sinha, I think I will move to you for our key message on, how, what we can do as a community, whether it is at the community level, at the humanitarian organization level, or at the administrative level. What is most important when it comes to planning based on forecasting?
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. Before I answer this question, let me take one example. It may not be of floods or cyclone, but I think it is equally applicable in terms of the spirit you see. And I'll give you the message at the end of it. In 2010, early 2010, and that is early January 2010, and then late February, there were two earthquakes. One happened in Haiti, and the second one in February happened in Chile. You see. And Haiti was practically totally destroyed. The presidential palace came down. The president was on the streets, you see. And in one event, as far as we know, they lost 267% of their GDP. I wonder if even after 10 years of the event, they have come back to, they have been able to rebuild all that, the loss of GDP, etc., etc. Now, in the same region, a month later, you see, in Chile faced a stronger earthquake. You see, I don't have the figures, but anyone can go on the net and inquire, Chile and this earthquake in 2010. Chile faced a stronger earthquake, you see. But human lives lost, and you see, in Haiti, more than 200,000 people apart from the loss of infrastructure and property and all that, which I mentioned, more than 200,000 people had lost their lives in Haiti. In Chile, the loss of lives was just about in 2 digits. Now, as far as the loss of infrastructure, property was concerned, that was also nil. So I had just joined, then Bihar State Disaster Management Authority, and this had happened. I'm talking. I joined in August 2010. So we did a case study on this. We didn't go to Haiti and Chile, but nowadays a lot of data is available. So we just wanted to understand as to what happened in these two neighboring countries in the same region and how this kind of it. Now, what came out of various things, talking about Chile as to why they were able to mitigate and and reduce the losses, etc. Two things came out which are prominent, apart from many things. There were many things, but two things which came out very, very prominently as a lesson from this study. One was safe construction, safe construction, safe construction. So, which means the country did anything and everything, law or bylaw or administrative orders or whatever ordinance or whatever was required to ensure that every construction, public or private, will be safe. They laid down the specifications, this and that, building code, whatever had to be done, they just did it. And the second thing was, you see, public awareness and education, public awareness and education, and public awareness and education. I mean, the story is not just about these two things. Obviously, they had to do a set of things, you see. But two things which stand out are this. Now extrapolate this thing to flood or cyclone, extreme climate events, etc., where we have both loss of lives and loss of property, etc. also. So, what is most important as a message? Again, I would say the two things. One, take the idea, inspiration from SFDRR, know disasters, know the risk, and therefore it is obligatory on the part of the country's administration, the state administration, the local administration to tell the public to bridge the last mile connectivity, go to the last woman, not there in the village, who is there in the kitchen, you know. You see, early warning system doesn't end just by beating some drums in a village at the panchayat level or village level. You have to reach out to the woman who is doing her, discharging her responsibility in a kitchen. That kind of a thing, you see, you got to do. So public awareness and education, do whatever. Start with the schools, catch them young, invest in a generation for the schools, etc. Overcome this bias of 5-year planning when you're talking of children. Do everything to create a generation of people, generation of youngsters, citizens who know about this. And second thing, which is equally true of earthquake or cyclone or floods, is make resilient infrastructure, whether it is public or it is private, because otherwise, even with the best of early warning system, if the houses are not safe, if the police stations are not safe, if the schools are not safe, if the hospitals are not safe in terms of their structural, specifications, they are, full of risk, and they will not only go down, but they would also, kill people. You see. So therefore, this is my message, you see, public awareness and education combined with know your risk and safe construction, safe construction, safe construction.
Thank you so much, sir, for those key messages. Dr. Bhanu, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Valerie. I'll simply just go ahead to what Sinha Sahab said, taking a clue from that for these things, there should be availability and access to multi-hazard early warning system, because early warning system as an approach has to be there. And this cannot happen without improvement in forecasting and mitigation approach for sustainability. So that's how I take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Over to Mr. Mihir, please.
Yeah, thanks, Valerie. Yeah, I think the key message I would say one is like I think we as a community, I think we need to shift focus from response to resilience building, and that will cover lots of aspects, including the safe construction and all that. The second thing is that all these tools are improving, and but it is not reaching to a last mile. Like for an example, if a family has to prepare their own risk management plan, how this information can be useful. So I think we need to take this information and try to communicate in the languages which has been understood by the various stakeholders. Because until unless we don't do that, they won't realize what is the importance of this. Um, uh, because IMD is coming out of with all the advisories and everything, but how we can make sense out of that and try to take some action on the ground which can overall improve the resilience. So yeah, let me stop here. There are lots of other things, but I think for this session, I think if we can do this two key thing, that would be really important. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Over to Mr. Makaran.
Yeah, so see, whenever anybody, we step out of our house, step out of our office, the first thing impacts us is weather, right? If there is there is rain, there might be whatever. There might be very heat outside temperature. The first thing impacts is weather. And still now basically we Indian people, we don't give much importance nowadays. It started, but we common people, we are not giving much importance to weather. Like since my childhood I remember, oh, there is the weather department has given rainfall forecast, I should not carry umbrella, or they are told it will be clear sky, then I should get go with umbrella, like people used to say. But now the forecasting has improved. And so first thing, like Sinas have told, education is must in all terms, whether or whatever, education is must. And second, we should include community. And community means everything. Like I'll give example, the government also should understand everything government cannot do, right? Community has to come forward. Like uh, government has understood earlier, okay, all roads cannot be built by government, so private companies come, they build roads. So they open that industry for private, so that create jobs, whatever, risk reduction, xyz. And then a telecom industry was open to private long back, and now we see there is lot of development, lot of other what should I say? It has improved a lot. Same with this weather industry, also government should open to everybody. Like then the forecasting capacity will also improve. Like when 2 3 private companies came in for forecasting, you see the forecasting quality which was in 2002 by IMD, and now the forecasting quality which is government is giving and private. Because I think this is because mainly, okay, all science is improving, infrastructure, computing facilities improving, but some private parties are coming, other companies are coming, and they also started doing this. So we should do that. Secondly, now you see I'll give an example. Like the weather industry opened in various states also, for like state of Maharashtra. They have in state of Maharashtra, they have installed 2000 weather stations across the state. Same way Bihar has also come up. They have given some tenders and allotted the different companies to install, I think, more than 5,000 weather stations in the state. So these type of things, and those are not IMD's weather stations; those are private weather stations. The control is with government, whether how to use that data, or whether all the auditing and all that part is with government, maintenance part with private, and also my thing is we should open these industries to everybody. Like private companies cannot install these weather radars. So if these type of things can opened, make all available data, which is IMD runs lot of weather models, IITM there is another government institute run lot of climate models, weather models, make all this data available to public. So, like in US, this data, all university, those who are running weather models, doing the research, that data is available to public. So, public can analyze that data, use that data, and when more brains will work on that, more information will come out of it. So, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, sir. That was also a very, very relevant point. I think we have covered most of the questions that were in the chat box through our conversations. If there are any more questions, I would request our participants to raise hands. But in the meanwhile, let me just go ahead and conclude the sessions in case we don't have more questions. Uh, Thank you all of the panelists for coming together and brainstorming on these issues and giving us more ideas. I want to conclude on some key remarks that were made by all of our participants, all of our panelists. I think one of the most important thing, which is also listed in the Sendai framework, is to know your risks, and that was very rightly emphasized by Mr. Anil. And he also emphasized that the key to success is not only working with the community, of course, that is important, but it is also important that the community owns the resources. When there is that sort of an ownership from the community, I think things work better. That was the same key message that was emphasized by Dr. Amir Ali, where he said that the community should be prepared and awareness should be ensured with the community. The next, we had key messages from Dr. Bhanu. One of the things that he emphasized during his conversation was that it is very important to link DRR with the development process. And that in itself will take us a long way in reducing the on infrastructural or economic impact that the disaster can have. And the economic relationship between the hazard, like the economic relationship of the hazard has to be understood. We need to approach everything from a multi-hazard scenario, which we can see in the country right now, whether it is a cyclone or a flood. Now we are also battling with a pandemic. So a multi-hazard lens needs to be adopted by all the organizations that are working towards this. Mr. Mihir emphasized that we must devise our own strategy based on the forecasting that is done. And now I come to the final key remarks by our panelist, which was safe constructions and disaster resilient infrastructure, which is extremely important. Emphasis on public awareness and education, which also again goes back to the point that I emphasized earlier on knowing your risks, which is also listed in the Sendai. Dr. Bhanu rightly emphasized on the availability and access to multi-hazard systems and also prediction systems so that we can further improve our response. Mr. Mihir said that we must shift our focus from response to resilience building, more from short to long term. And it is also important that while we are communicating, while we are emphasizing on awareness and education, it must be done in a language that is understandable by the community. It has to be clear, it has to be concise, straight, in a language that the community can understand. Mr. Makaran also emphasized on community inclusion while responses, and he made a very, very relevant point where he said that this data of forecasting should be made available to more actors, because when more people come together, maybe we can come up with better responses. And this would include opening up the industry to more private players, which has also been seen in states like Maharashtra and Bihar. If I have missed any key points, please feel free to add to that, panelists. Okay, great. All right, thank you very, very much to Dr. Anil, Mr. Amir Ali, who has already left, Dr. Bhanu, Mr. Mihir, and Mr. Makaran for being with us today and for helping our participants understand, the key ideas around this issue very pertinently. Thank you, Gohar, for helping us organize and put this session together. And thanks to our participants for taking the time out to be here. Thank you. With that, I would like to end this session and conclude the session.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Very well moderated, Vallari. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the encouragement.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bhanuji,
Sir,
Have a
sir.
safe weekend.
Sanji, Meher, wonderful
Yeah.
meeting with all of you.
Thank you. Bye bye,
Thank you.
And
Thank
thanks
you.
to
Bye.
Bahad also.
Bye.